One of the most fascinating tech stories at this year's Tour de France for me is the surprising rise of one-by drivetrains like this one here. Yes, single chainrings on some of the biggest names in the race. While two-by does remain the norm, an increasing number of SRAM sponsored pros are going all in on one-by. And get this, even GC contender Jonas Vingegaard have ridden the first 10 stages of the Tour de France on a one-by setup. Will he stick with it in the mountains? It remains to be seen. He has 4 spare bikes with one by, but also 2 with a traditional 2-by setup. So a swap is definitely on the table. So the big question is whether this is a turning point for one by in pro road racing, or is it just a little SRAM sponsorship magic at play? And critics will argue it's just because SRAM can't make a reliable front meg. So Jonas Vingegaard is riding a Cervelo S5, an aero race bike with a SRAM Red axis group set comprising a 52-tooth aero chainring and a 1036 cassette on the back. I filmed his bike at the Grand Depart. He has 4 bikes set up like this, but also 2 bikes, the S5 with 2-by as well. It remains to be seen what setup he'll use in the mountains. We'll find out in a few days' time. But even stage 10, not officially a mountain day, still had over 4,000 meters of climbing. So definitely a place where gearing is something you need in abundance. So we could see him swapping bike for the mountains, either going to the Explore group set, like the bike behind me, with the bigger 1046 cassette, and keep that 52 chainring on the front, or go to a smaller chainring for a bit more climbing range. Or he could, which might be the easier option, go to a SRAM Red axis 2-by setup. We don't know the actual reason that Jonas Vingegaard, a GC contender in this year's Tour de France, is opting for a 1-by. Pressure from the team, pressure from the sponsors, unlikely on both counts in my opinion. So it could be he likes their simplicity, likes the weight saving, or likes the aero savings. And Cervelo claim you can save up to 2 watts by going to a 1-by setup. And what's really interesting in this conversation around 1-by versus 2-by, and it really is a versus, a bit of a battle, it doesn't have to be though, does it, is that his main rival in the GC race, Tadej Pogačar, is on a 2-by setup, a more conventional Shimano Dura-Ace Di2 gearing combo. With 1-by drivetrain booming in gravel and XC mountain bike, you would think that road pros would switch as well. But no, 2-by setups still dominate the pro peloton and therefore the amateur ranks as well. Now, the front derailleur was invented way back in 1895, but didn't really become popular until after the Second World War. So those early Tour de France race bikes had a single chainring. Yes, we are getting full circle in an interesting sort of way. The front derailleur has evolved a lot, but essentially does the same job as when it was first invented. 2 metal plates that move the chain up and down the chainrings. Very basic, very rudimentary, as good as it is today. But the front derailleur allowed riders to access a wide gear range, crucial for climbing steep mountains and hitting insane speeds on descents. So what about 1-by drivetrains? For gravel and mountain biking, 1-by has exploded because it's simple. 1 shifter, 1 chainring, less weight, and fewer things to go wrong. No front derailleur means less complexity, easier maintenance, and fewer drop chains as well. Perfect for rough terrain and variable conditions.
If it's that amazing, then why hasn't it caught on?
The big reason? Gear range and efficiency. Road racing demands a massive range of gears, from super low gears for climbing the big mountains to tight gears for sprinting at 60 km per hour. With 2-by setups, riders get more finely spaced gears and a wider overall range without massive jumps between the sprockets. Plus, 2-by setups offer better chain line and less drivetrain drag in many cases, so they can be more efficient on smooth tarmac. And of course, teams and riders are conservative. When you're fighting for a Tour de France victory, you don't want to gamble on unproven tech mid-season. That said though, the front derailleur isn't perfect. They add weight, complexity, and the potential for mechanical problems. Chain drops can and do happen with any group set, even Shimano, who have the best shifting in the game. I saw a drop chain in a race just the other day. It's why most Tour race bikes do have a chain guide fitted just in case. Compared to that, 1-by does offer better chain retention. The rear mech has a clutch mechanism to stop the chain slapping around, and it's a narrow wide chainring too. and you're not moving between the two chain rings, which is a big risk with 2x and a drop chain. This video isn't really meant to be a 1x versus 2x video. I've done that in the past, but it does end up being that sort of debate and conversation. I really want to shine a light on the fact that a GC contender in the Tour de France is using 1x and get your thoughts and reaction to that. I think it's a great thing. He's using a technology that clearly works for him, and I don't think it's been forced by SRAM or Cervelo or a team to use a group set he wouldn't be happy using. And he's been using it quite happily so far in the Tour de France. And I can't wait to see what happens in the rest of the race, whether he keeps with 1x, goes to a bigger Explore gearing, or goes back to 2x. And if he does go back to 2x in the mountains, that's not an admission that 1x doesn't work. It's just that 1x only works in certain cases, on certain stages, and in the big mountains, 2x still has the advantage. But I like the fact we have more choice, and it's choice at the end of the day. Lots of people don't want 1x, and that's cool. Like I say, most of my road bikes are still 2x, but I'm increasingly leaning towards 1x possibly being the ultimate setup for simplicity, aero, weight savings, and clean looks. Any debate about 1x versus 2x does have to include gear range and actual gears you have available to use. So here's a gear chart of the gear setup on Jonas Vingegaard's S5 with the gearing on the bike I saw at the Grand Depart and how it compares to a more conventional setup being used by his main rival, Tadej Pogačar.
Comparing the 1x12 setup on Jonas Vingegaard's bike to Tadej Pogačar's 2x12 setup with a 5440 chain set and an 1130 cassette, Tadej has a bigger range, 368% to 291, which is a massive difference on stages like stage 10, with lots of climbing and descending. Tadej also has smaller gear steps in the crucial 40 to 50 km/h range compared to how limiting 1x appears to be. But that said, in the race so far, that smaller overall range and the bigger gear steps doesn't appear to be holding Jonas Vingegaard back at all, and he's responding well to the surges and attacks from Tadej.
So, will the front derailleur vanish from pro racing? Maybe someday, although I can't honestly see it happening in the next couple of decades, maybe not in my lifetime. It's proven, you know where you are, and outside Tour, it's massively popular. But recent advances in 1x technology are impressive. Though big range cassettes, improved chain retention, and electronic shifting make 1x more viable than ever before, and the move to 13 speed with the latest SRAM Explore is definitely a step in the right direction. And I've been super impressed with the group set on both gravel and road bikes, such as a 3T Strada behind me. It's the first time I've had a 1x experience where it actually works and doesn't have really any compromises compared to my previous experience of 1x. I'm open-minded, but most of my road bikes are 2x still. But I like the simplicity of 1x, which works on the gravel and mountain bike, and there's no reason why that simplicity can't be brought to a road bike as well, especially for beginner and new cyclists where the complexity of shifting front and rear derailleurs can be a bit confusing and a bit of a minefield. Plus, I think 1x looks fantastic on a road bike, nice and clean and simple too, and if there are a few watts of aero savings, then I'll take them. But the downside is, because SRAM are really the only company doing 1x on the road, you need a frame that has a UDH dropout for this new group set here. But as Jonas has showed, you can do 2x12, and it all depends on the roads you're riding, how much climbing you have, and what sort of gear range you need for the riding you do. And that still is the inherent limitation of 1x. You have to think more about the cassette size and the chainring size, and that combination to get the right setup for the riding you are doing. And now the downside to 1x adoption is that only SRAM are really interested in trying the technology and offering it to their pro athletes. Shimano and Campax show no interest in 1x at all. But I do like the fact that SRAM are really challenging the status quo. But road pros and amateurs want a setup that's proven, versatile and finely tunable, and that means 2x for now. But watch your space, watch your peloton, because things are slowly changing. So what do you think of 1x versus 2x and the use of 1x increasingly in the Tour de France peloton this year? Drop a comment down below. And if you want to see a video of my experience of 1x13, definitely not a pro, on this 3T Strada Italia behind me, then watch this video right up here.